Unbelievable!
How many bees would it take to lift a car off the ground? Not push it, not tow it, lift it. Straight up, wheels dangling, into the air. It sounds absurd. A single honeybee weighs about as much as a grain of rice. A car weighs as much as a small elephant. And yet the answer to this question is more surprising than you'd think. Bees are, pound for pound, some of the strongest flyers on the planet. Let's set the rules first. We're using an average honeybee, Apis mellifera, weighing roughly 1/10 of a gram. Our car is a standard sedan, weighing about 1,500 kilograms. No mechanical assistance, no tricks, just bees, working together, generating enough combined lift to raise that car clean off the pavement. Sounds impossible. Let's find out if it actually is. Here's the first thing most people get wrong about bees. You'd assume something so small could barely lift itself, let alone anything extra. But Cornell biologist Thomas Seeley, who has spent decades studying honeybee behavior, has documented just how much a forager can carry mid-flight. A loaded honeybee can fly home with nectar and pollen weighing up to nearly its own body weight. Imagine sprinting a marathon while carrying another version of yourself on your back. That's a normal Tuesday for a bee. So if one bee can lift close to its own weight, the math seems simple at first. Divide the car's mass by the bee's carrying capacity, and you get your number. But nature doesn't work in straight lines, and this is where the story gets interesting. Let's set the stakes properly. Insects don't scale the way we imagine. There's a principle in physics called the square-cube law, first described by Galileo in the 17th century. As an object grows larger, its volume, and therefore its weight, increases much faster than its strength, which is tied more closely to the cross-sectional area of its muscles. That's why an ant can carry many times its body weight, while an elephant can barely lift double its own mass. Bees benefit enormously from this law. Their small size is not a weakness here, it's a superpower. But there's a catch. Lifting your own nectar load using flapping wings is very different from generating enough combined lift in a coordinated way to raise a rigid 2-ton object with fixed geometry. A swarm of bees pulling in slightly different directions doesn't add up to clean vertical lift, it adds up to chaos. So before we get our final number, we have to ask a harder question. Could bees, physically, even coordinate a lift like this? Let's build the scenario in stages. Stage 1. Assume perfect physics. Every single bee flies in flawless unison, generating lift straight upward, with zero wasted energy and zero interference between wings. In this fantasy scenario, we only need to worry about raw force. A single bee's flight muscles can generate lift equal to roughly 1.5 to 2 times its own body weight, according to biomechanics research on flapping wing insects, including foundational work by entomologist Michael Dickinson, whose robotic bee wing experiments at Caltech mapped out exactly how insect flight muscles produce force relative to body mass. Multiply that lift per bee by enough bees, and eventually the numbers cross the 2-ton threshold. Here's where the real numbers come in. If one bee weighs about 0.1 grams, and can generate lift equal to roughly 1.5 times its body weight, that's about 0.15 grams of lift force per bee. A car weighing 1,500 kilograms is 1.5 billion milligrams, or 1.5 million grams. Divide that by 0.15 grams of lift per bee, and you land somewhere around 10 million bees. 10 million. That's not a swarm, that's a small nation of bees. Stage 2. Now let's make it harder, because real bees don't fly in perfect unison. Wing beats overlap, bodies collide. Air turbulence from thousands of nearby wings actually reduces lift efficiency, a phenomenon documented in dense formation flight studies of insects and birds alike. Once you pack millions of bees into a space small enough to physically attach to a car's frame, their combined efficiency doesn't scale cleanly. Researchers studying swarm aerodynamics have found that clustering can cut individual lift output by a significant margin, sometimes reducing effective force by 1/3 or more. So that clean 10 million number creeps upward. Realistically, accounting for interference and imperfect coordination, you're looking at closer to 14 to 15 million bees to actually get those wheels off the ground. Stage 3. Now for the part nobody wants to think about. Could a car's surface even physically hold that many bees at once? A honeybee's body is roughly 15 millimeters long, covering every square inch of a sedan's exterior, roof, hood, doors, windows, and undercarriage in a single tightly packed layer gets you somewhere in the range of 500,000 bees, maybe fewer. To reach 14 million, you'd need bees stacked in layers 8, 10, even 20 deep, gripping onto each other rather than the car itself. At that point, you're not lifting a car with bees, you're lifting a car with a writhing bee-shaped structure that happens to be attached to a car. It would look less like a swarm and more like the vehicle had been swallowed by a living, humming golden mass, wings blurring into a single deafening roar. And that roar would be very real. At full defensive volume, a single agitated bee produces a buzz you can hear from a few feet away. Multiply that by 14 million, and acoustic estimates based on colony noise studies suggest you'd be standing next to something as loud as a jet engine at takeoff. You wouldn't just see the car lift off, you'd feel it in your chest. Let's pause on that image for a second, because it matters. Picture the car from a distance, first. At 100 feet away, it would look like a normal sedan sitting quietly in a parking lot, maybe humming faintly. Nothing more. Walk closer, and the humming becomes a wall of sound. Closer still, and the car's paint job disappears entirely, replaced by a shifting golden-black texture, thousands of wings catching the light at slightly different angles every second. The vehicle's outline would still be recognizable, roughly, the way a snow-covered car is still recognizable as a car, but every visible surface would be alive. Now think about the weight problem in reverse. 14 million bees isn't just a lifting force. It's also 14 million tiny bodies, each adding a small amount of mass themselves. At roughly 0.1 grams each, that's about 1,400 kilograms of bee, nearly matching the weight of the car itself. So in a strange twist, almost half the total force those bees generate isn't going toward lifting the car at all. It's going toward lifting each other. This is the same problem rocket engineers wrestle with when designing multi-stage rockets, a challenge sometimes called the tyranny of the rocket equation, first formalized mathematically by Konstantin Tsiolkovsky in 1903. Add more fuel, and you add more weight, which then requires even more fuel to lift. Bees, it turns out, run into a miniature version of the exact same problem. That's why the real number skews even higher than the clean textbook calculation suggests. Once you account for bees lifting bees, researchers modeling collective insect force output would likely push the practical figure closer to 16 or 17 million, just to leave enough spare lift to get the car's mass moving as well. At that scale, you're no longer just building a swarm, you're building an entire flying ecosystem with its own internal physics problem nested inside the original one. So here's the actual answer, the one backed by the numbers. It would take somewhere between 10 and 15 million honeybees working in close to perfect coordination, generating lift near the upper limit of what their flight muscles can produce, to raise a standard car off the ground. For context, that's more bees than exist in roughly 200 to 300 full honeybee colonies. You would need to combine the entire bee population of a mid-sized commercial apiary operation just to get one car airborne, for a few seconds, before exhaustion set in and gravity won anyway. Because here's the twist nobody expects. Even if you solved the coordination problem, even if every bee generated maximum lift in perfect unison, bee flight muscles can only sustain that output for short bursts before overheating and fatiguing. Sustained maximum effort flight, the kind documented in high-speed insect flight studies, lasts only seconds at a time before a bee needs to rest and cool down. So even in our impossible scenario, the car wouldn't cruise gently into the sky. It would jerk upward violently for a moment, hover in stuttering, chaotic bursts as different sections of the bee mass fatigue and recover at different rates, and then crash back down as exhausted bees give out faster than fresh ones can compensate. Which brings us back to something worth sitting with. A creature you can barely see, weighing next to nothing, brushing against your arm on a summer afternoon, is built with a strength-to-weight ratio so extreme that it takes a small nation of them, working at the very edge of their physical limits, to move something you drive to work every day. You've probably swatted one away without a second thought, but scale that bee up to the size of a dog, keep its proportional strength intact, and it could probably flip a small car over just by landing on it wrong. So the next time you hear that tiny, frustrated buzz circling your picnic table, remember what you now know. That's not a nuisance. That's 10 millionths of the raw lifting power it would take to send your car into the sky. How many bees would it take to lift a car? About 14 million. But maybe the better question is this: how many things in the world are that strong, and still small enough that we forget to notice?